Ethan Behrman, Left Coast News.
Great to talk to you today. Thanks for tuning in for Dispatch number 40. Look, we're going to get into the Democratic presidential candidates, and I'm going to pick them apart kind of one by one, what their pros and their cons are, and we're going to do some analysis on them. I'm going to start with Joe Biden today because he is the front runner right now in all the polls. Regardless of what you think of your candidate, that's the polls as of today. And I know it's early. I know we're still a few months away from the first votes being cast in the primary states like Iowa and New Hampshire. And remember, California's early this year. But I want to talk about Joe Biden, especially in light of the fact that last night CNN had their big town hall on climate change because the DNC, of all ridiculous things, has not made that part of the debate. Is that not silly? The climate crisis is real. And by the way, it's way broader than things like just the carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere, the warming of our planet. The climate crisis is much broader. And there's another story today that we're going to get into. And it has to do with like the resilience of our planet, not just our planet. And when I say planet, I'm talking about the life forms on it. Most importantly, there's humans. Look, the planet's going to survive us. There will be a planet Earth when we're gone. And there will even be some species. I mean, we know cockroaches will survive in some form or another, and tardigrades will survive. It's humanity that we need to make sure survives. And we're dependent on the ecosystem, so many other life forms. There's another story I'm going to get into a little bit later in the show. And it has to do with RoundUp glyphosate, the killing of the insects on Earth, which is absolutely alarming beyond belief, and a move that Germany did. So let's talk about the climate crisis. Let's talk about Joe Biden a little bit because it all ties together. First things first, Joe Biden, a lifetime of service. You've heard me talk about this on TV. He has 50 years of public service. He's given his life to serving us in the public sphere. He has given every step of the way. I mean, early on in his political career, his wife, his child died in a car wreck. He could have just quit right then and there. He pushed through, he pushed forward. He has been a public servant forever. And interestingly enough, on the topic of the climate crisis, he actually is one of the first people in government to have tried to implement climate change legislation. That's right. He said this correctly. You know, he actually introduced a bill in 1986. It died in the Senate, but the next year, another version of his legislation survived an amendment to a State Department funding bill, and President Ronald Reagan signed it into law. So it was called the Global Climate Protection Act. So he's a leader on this. He really has been there from day one. He's not the most progressive candidate. He's no Bernie Sanders. He's not saying free college for everyone. He's not saying free medical care for everyone, a Medicare for all. He's not taking that approach. He is a more traditional, moderate to liberal Democrat. He has issues in his background, of course, with legislation that at the time seemed like the right thing to do, and in hindsight is able to be picked apart once we learned. But one of the key things I think any great leader must be able to take in new information as it comes in and change a position, change a stance, modify where you are. Hey, you know, the approach we took to crime in the early to mid 1990s isn't working out the way we wanted it to or thought it would. So now let's modify that approach. Let's take a different tack on it. Let's try and reintegrate people more successfully into society. I actually give Joe Biden a lot of credit for that. He changes based on information as it's presented. That is laudable. That is not flip-flopping. Flip-flopping is when you change your position simply because a poll came in and said you ought to do it differently. Okay, that's flip-flopping. Changing position because facts and data and information has shed new light on an issue, that's called being a smart, intelligent human being who's trying to do better for the world. I give Joe a lot of credit for that. So let's talk about his poll numbers for a second. This is the biggest reason we're talking about Joe Biden first. He is the front runner. He's the front runner against President Trump. And this is the most important thing for those of us who have been against President Trump from day one. I have been against Trump from the day he entered the race. I've been against Trump from the day he entered the race. I could have even seen certain Republicans like, I don't fully agree with him, but Marco Rubio didn't scare me. Donald Trump scared me. Scott Walker freaked me out when he was in the primary for the Republicans. I totally disagree with Ted Cruz on a large number of topics, but he didn't scare me. Donald Trump scared me. He scared me because he has no experience. He's a narcissist in every measurement of that word. He's demonstrated a lack of any fitness for the office. We understand now, based on the Mueller report, that numerous people on his team were talking to the Russians, were open to getting Russians help. President Trump himself said, hey, Russia, you want to hack Hillary Clinton? Please show us her emails. He openly invited a foreign power to interfere in our elections. We know that President Trump has potentially 10 obstruction of justice counts. We just happen to have an attorney general right now who is deferring exclusively to an office of legal counsel's opinion that you cannot indict a sitting president. Trump's got to go. Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, has not opened up impeachment inquiry yet. We got to vote him out then, right? So right now, I'm looking at the Real Clear Politics Trump versus Biden polls. This goes back. So the June 23rd through August 30th polling average, this is across all polls, Biden beats Trump by 10 points. Biden beats Trump. That's better than any other Democratic candidate. So again, we can argue that some candidates, maybe you prefer Elizabeth Warren for this, you prefer Bernie Sanders for that, you like Beto O'Rourke for something else, you love Senator Kamala Harris for Biden beats Trump in all of the polls. The latest polls, IBD-TIPP, Biden plus 12. Emerson, Biden plus 8. Quinnipiac, Biden plus 16. Fox News, Biden plus 12. Rasmussen is the closest one. This is all the way back from late June. Rasmussen leans to the right and was one of the few that predicted Trump winning. Still shows Biden plus 4, even in a pro-conservative group. Biden plus 4. So this is huge. Joe Biden makes gaffes. Joe Biden messes up. Joe Biden, my advice to Joe Biden's campaign is he needs to be doing speeches by script. He needs to not wing it. He is not Donald Trump. He's also not Beto O'Rourke. Beto is one of those candidates who can off the cuff it. Joe Biden is not an off-the-cuff guy. That's when he makes gaffes. Most voters don't care about the gaffes, but it sure hits the news cycles and doesn't work for him. Keep him on script. Keep him with a speech. Keep him talking for 45 minutes, at an event with a script, with a teleprompter. Don't do the Trumpian or Beto. Man, he just takes questions from people, and I'll talk about Beto in another podcast. But Biden's campaign needs to keep him on script. They need to keep doing what they have been doing. I know a lot of people are being really critical right now where he's done this kind of what people are negatively labeling a low-energy campaign. That's the right approach. For Biden, he is the front runner. He does not need to be throwing it all in yet. Save the energy, save the money, save your staff, right? Save that for December. Right before the primaries hit is when his campaign needs to go all out and just hammer those early primary states, hammer Iowa, hammer New Hampshire, spend time in California is going to be really important this year as well in the primaries. That's when you let Joe loose and you keep him on the scripts and you have him do speech after speech after speech after speech where he attacks Trump, Never, the front runner, never attack one of your fellow candidates in the Democratic primary. Joe Biden will talk time and time and time again about how he will beat Donald Trump, how he will make the correct balance of focus about the climate crisis and how he has the history in it, and how he will take this right approach of balancing the interests in our country, and how he will convert us from the fossil fuel industry and move the jobs from the fossil fuel industry to things like geothermal. He'll balance out wind and solar and other future fuels that we will discover, like hydrogen, possibly some other fusion energy. Maybe even he could point out how we have new technologies to reuse the nuclear fuel waste as a source of energy production. There are so many ways to do this, and Joe Biden is a great guy to do that. And I want to point out something else. I want to play this for you. This is from last night's CNN town hall, where I thought Joe Biden did a fine job. By the way, I know people are pointing out to the thing that happened in his eye. That is normal. It's not serious. It does not indicate a health problem of any kind. So all the right-wingers can shut up about that. It's a little blood vessel that burst in the white of his eye. Totally happens. Not indicative of a health problem. Joe Biden, by the way, at 76 years old, which is, I think, a valid concern for some people, that, age can become a factor. If he serves 8 years, he's 84 years old, when he's president. 84 can still be vibrant, but you're not as sharp as a 45-year-old. It's just, that is a fact. That's why fighter pilots aren't still flying planes, the fighter jets at 84. They're not as quick in reaction. They're not as quick in the thinking. I do believe Joe is very vibrant. He looks great. He sounds good. And he's making the same gaffes he has made for 50 years in his career. So it's nothing new. But take a listen to this little clip from last night's CNN town hall. I think he makes a strong argument.
Plans are great, but executing on those plans is a very different thing. It is an existential threat. There is no doubt about that. And the fact of the matter is that we make up 15% of the problem. The rest of the world makes up 85% of the problem. If we did everything perfectly, everything, and we must and should, in order to get other countries to move, we still have to get the rest of the world to come along. And the fact of the matter is we have to up the ante considerably. And I have great experience in leading coalitions, both at home and internationally.
That really is an area that Joe Biden is head and shoulders above every other candidate in the Democratic primary. It is that experience. It's that foreign policy experience too, as vice president for 8 years under Barack Obama. That's a huge deal. That means something. He has relationships with countries around the world. He understands how these systems work. That's one of the great disadvantages of the sitting president, where it's like he doesn't understand how anything works. And so he goes his own way and it doesn't work. So I say that is an area where Joe Biden has a very, very strong argument, that you have to work in an international coalition to get these things done. You don't work unilaterally. Again, that's a huge weakness of Trump, where he just goes off on his own and it's caused more problems than anything. And on the topic, though, of Joe Biden, one last thing. Look, again, I think there are a lot of great Democratic candidates. We're going to talk more about the different campaigns in future shows. But I think Joe Biden, if he wins the primary, I'm voting for him for president. Aren't you? If your candidate loses in the Democratic primary, are you not going to get behind Joe Biden? That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. You really want 4 more years of Trump, do you? Oh man, I can't imagine that. I really can't. So one of the reasons why the climate crisis is way more, like I said, than simply saying, oh, it's carbon dioxide, it's burning fossil fuels. It's way more than that. We're dying today because of poison. We're killing the environment, not just with heat, not just with carbon dioxide. Those actually aren't the most important things that are killing us. It's the poisons we put in our environment today. You've heard me talk about glyphosate and RoundUp for many, many years. On Left Coast News, go back to Dispatch 19, where I talked about RoundUp and another jury finding that it causes cancer. Really a deep, problematic product that is wiping out insect populations, okay? Germany announced yesterday, the home country of Bayer AG. Bayer AG bought Monsanto. The deal closed last year for $63 billion. Monsanto makes Roundup and glyphosate. Huge product line for them, multi-billion-dollar product line. Bayer bought them. The home country of Bayer, Germany, just announced they're phasing out glyphosate, period. Why? Because it wipes out insect populations, crucial for ecosystems and pollination of food crops. It's also suspected by some experts to cause cancer in humans. It will be banned by the end of 2023 when the EU's current approval period for it expires. Remember, Germany is one of those countries that's seeing a massive drop, up to 70% drop in insect diversity and numbers, where they've been counting since the 1970s in Germany. Their environment minister, Svenja Schulze, said, quote, "What harms insects also harms people. What we need is more humming and buzzing. A world without insects is not worth living in." Well, she's got that wrong. It's not just not worth living in. We might not survive. We would have to create fake pollinators. We would have to find way more in our ecosystem. Remember, there's 100 times the weight of insects on Earth than humans. So my only fear out of this, I think it's a huge move by Germany. I wish the United States would follow suit. The EU is supposed to reevaluate glyphosate in 2022, but Berlin is, quote, embarking on a confrontation course with European law, according to the German chemical industry. I applaud Germany in this move. And I would love to hear one of our candidates speak out and say, yep, I'm going to move forward with getting the EPA to ban glyphosate by 2023 to follow suit with our friends in Germany. Remember, Germany has more money at stake in this than the United States does. My only concern is that the chemical industry and farming groups will find a chemical that is even more toxic than glyphosate. And remember, it's not glyphosate alone. It's often in combination with the other chemicals is what we've found that makes it so damaging, destroying certain gut bacteria functions and enzymes, disrupting those processes. Just go back again to Dispatch 19. I'm not going to repeat it all here, but it also has to do with saving the bees. Remember, we've talked about this time and time again. They've highlighted the risk of declining insect numbers, again, noting that they're vital for pollinating plants, including food crops. Save the bees. A record 1.75 million people in the German state of Bavaria voted, calling for less chemical use, more organic farming, and green spaces. We could learn from Germany. So what are your thoughts on Joe Biden, the climate crisis, glyphosate? Comment below. Send me your thoughts as well. leftcoastnews@ethanbehrman.com. Please like and share and subscribe. Really appreciate you listening. Thank you so much for joining me on Dispatch 40. I'll talk to you in the next one.